Welcome to Grand Blanc Watchdogs podcast, now being broadcast on Metro Flint News Talk Radio. Your host, Lonnie Adkins.
And Monica Shapiro.
Okay, so as always, lots of stuff going on.
So
Let's
much
talk Grand
stuff. I
Blanc.
can't get back and revisit things I'd like to delve into further.
So what's the topics? What do we got today, Monica?
We've got the lawsuit by the firefighters. We've got
Unbelievable.
Yes. We've got the Shrug Herd Round Grand Blanc and the ambulance service decisions.
So if we go in order, I love the first one first, and that is this beautiful lawsuit. This is unbelievable.
Courageous firefighters. Not only do they run into burning buildings, but they're willing to take on Dennis. And they're strong men, and they're saying, hey, we know we should have been up for that full-time job. What are you doing here? And
well, reading some of it, Monica, this is much bigger than just, hey, we need firefighters. This touches on their First Amendment rights, potential whistleblower. I mean, this is
type stuff.
A big deal.
Absolutely. And anyway, they're allowed to speak up in support of their chief and not face
retribution.
Yeah, retribution. We're going to put you in your place. You dared to come out in public and embarrass this administration. They should be embarrassed. What they were doing was poor, wrong, bad. Of course they should be embarrassed. And then and what do? We double down and protect Dennis. And these guys stood up to that. It's impressive. It's impressive. Thank you, firefighters, for not taking this lying down. Good for you. Not cringing away in fear of Dennis, who is such a bully. And that's who's running our township. A snake, fearful and bullying.
Oh, you definitely have a two-headed snake here, yes.
That's the first thing you said to me way back when you connected with me. You said, the two-headed snake has got to go.
Yes, if you can't get rid of them both, you got to get rid of at least one of the heads.
But we tried. We tried and we failed. But it doesn't matter because we actually have a second chance. All this publicity gives us a second chance to dismantle the situation. This is quite inflammatory stuff we're allowing ourselves to say. But thank you, firefighters. Thank you for keeping the issue alive in the public's mind. Nothing is improved at the fire station. I mean, except that they still have their leader that they like. But, I mean, he is being completely overruled on hiring. And that is mind-boggling.
So, it's funny, but really it's just sad. So why do we have employees that had to resort to litigation?
Not just employees, firefighters. He's made an enemy of firefighters. That's what we want, running the township, keeping us safe. It does get to the heart of everything. It is why the recall, folks, and the petitions are coming around starting May 2nd. Make sure and email us if you want a petition for the recall in Grand Blanc Township. Email petitions@gbrecall.com and we'll send someone out and you can sign away. Get them on the ballot. Get them out by November. Let's do it.
And I just want to add something. When this firefighter issue started, right, with the firing of the chief or the suspension of the chief and whatever, it got the community really once engaged in this issue. Right?
Yes.
And now fast forward, God, 6, 7, 8 months, and
they're still talking about having more and more meetings with other communities and probably hiring a consultant. Get with the guy you hired who's good and stop all this FOIA cover up, snarling
But,
snake pit stuff.
but now it takes the department to sue. I mean, how do you correct course? Well, we already summed it up. That's why the recall is there. But how do you correct course or sway a board when if your public safety department, if you
Can't do
don't
it.
listen
They
to
can't sway the board. Their own
yeah,
fire department can't sway the board.
I mean, my gosh, man, what do you need? So you can't, your residents can't sway you, your public safety can't sway you, so you hire a consultant for hundreds of thousands of dollars to sway you?
And you
What's
hire a
backward?
full-time public relations person. They now have
What's
a
backward?
designated public relations position. They need that because what they're doing is so unpopular. My son gave me a bulletproof vest for a Christmas present because he knew I was stirring this stuff up. So
Oh
I
my
have a
gosh.
bulletproof vest. I might start wearing it if we keep saying such things out loud in public. But
Well, you know what, you can't say
we're
the truth.
whistleblowers from the outside, Lonnie. We're just looking
Right.
in with public information. That's all we're doing.
Okay, so I guess we'll just have to see how this lawsuit progresses, how everything goes. So what else is going on?
All right.
What
So wait, now it's time for a break. We've got to go. When we come back, the shrug heard round Graham Blank.
Welcome back to Grand Blank Watchdogs podcast. So, Monica, where did we leave off here?
We're finished with the lawsuit by the firefighters, and we said a lot of inflammatory things. And
Well,
I
they're
said
all
I
true.
needed a
All
bulletproof
true.
vest.
Yes.
Is that perhaps libelous? I think we're allowed to say things, and that's certainly First Amendment. And the information that we have is only strictly from public meetings and things in the newspaper, and occasionally somebody behind the scenes lets me know is going on. But then you can always find all kinds of evidence in it. You don't have to depend on a person alerting you to what's going on because as soon as it is all public. In that
So let's
sense,
get
they are
into
fully transparent.
the shrug.
All right. The shrug heard
So
round Grand Blank. I just loved it. There he is on ABC 12. They never challenge him. They never challenge him in ABC 12. I don't know why that is, but they never ask a hardball question. They just take it on faith, whatever he says. So he goes, you saw it, right? I showed it to you. You watched it, didn't you?
yes, it was beautiful. It's unbelievable. I can't not laugh.
It's just
sad.
like the fire department because at the end of he says, "Well, we're having, we've had a lot of meetings, and maybe what I'd really like to do is have a meeting
It's
where I
another
can tell
meeting.
people."
Let's have another meeting. You know, in
And
the,
at the meeting, what he says, I'd like to have residents in so that they can hear how expensive this is going to be, and we don't think they can afford it, and we want to spare them. And so we'll have this
you know,
meeting. And we'll just explain to the residents, and then he says a bunch of muddled stuff because he doesn't even realize that he's talking about a district that includes many other projects outside of the $8 million one, that one beleaguered neighborhood managed to pass the petitions and get the estimate from the Drain Commission. And it sounds like they're slower than the Road Commission at coming through with these estimates to help these neighborhoods make these things go. But anyway, they already, that little district knew they were looking at $8 million for like 50 houses to split. It's ridiculous. Obviously, the neighborhood can't pay for it, Mr. Bennett. What are you talking about? Of course they can't. It's for the public infrastructure department to make that happen for the community. It won't be easy, and it's going to cost us as a community. We're going to together make this something we use our taxes towards, whatever form that has to take. Some of the taxes we pay should go towards fixing this situation. And that's what
Well,
I
you know,
believe. And he could have said that, and he could have said, we're going to have a meeting. We're going to explain to you which district you're in, but you don't really have to think about this. Just know that your government is going to solve this for you. Effective
well, what
leaders say that. They don't do what he did. He says, "Oh, we're going to have a meeting," and when the residents hear the problems, is there a solution? He shrugs. There's no solution. There's no solution. Costs a lot of money. We don't know whose district it is.
Well, what drives me crazy when people say, "Well, we need to have another meeting or we need to get a consultant." There's a term in corporate America that is paralysis by analysis. And
Yeah.
at some point, once you've analyzed and met and talked and beat the thing to death, a
Beat
lot
the
of
thing
times,
to death, Lonnie.
what happens is these needs die under their own weight because they just get paralyzed. They
Paralyzed is right. They can't think of a thing. And, I posted that little video where I showed Scott kind of floundering on ABC 12 and me responding. And of course, right away on Grand Blanc Uncensored, there was a message from one Jeff Joyner, who's a frequent apologist for Mr. Bennett and his policies, and in fact was the hand-picked board member that they rumored that they were hoping to get added to their board. But instead, I don't know why or how, Mike Yancho took it into his own hands and nominated independent woman, no ties to the board, Michelle Ryder, and Sarah Hugo quickly seconded it, and the motion was made, and they had to vote. It was great to see. Little independence there. Gives me hope. Anyway, Mr. Joyner came right up on Grand Blanc Uncensored to defend Mr. Bennett. He says, "What's your plan?" As if there couldn't possibly be anything other than a shrug. There is no possible way that a township could ever make this happen. I did do quite a bit of research. I did speak to Jeff Wright at length. Jeff Wright certainly was insisting that we could never use sewer fees to pay for drains, and that the way things are set up, there is no funding for drains, and the only people who can pay for it, according to Act 40, are homeowners. And these are roadblocks. There are roadblocks. But a little bit of research, I read Act 40, and while it does say that the homeowners can pay for these projects, and this is the normal way of doing business, they're the ones that benefit from it, which is something you could argue, I think, right up to the state court, that different areas don't benefit equally from sewers either. And if you're not on the water line, they have no way of knowing how much sewer you're using. So it's never particularly fair. You just know you want your sanitary sewers to work throughout any community. But you also want your storm drains to work throughout any community. And it's a shame, I don't know why Michigan set this up, this great big roadblock, so the communities are just sitting with drains since 1937 or 39. I'm not sure which awful year it is, but it's 87 or 89 years old, the system that we're all working off throughout the state, basically. Nothing's been changed, except some communities have had better building codes, I guess, and upgraded it more. But it is, the way things are set up is clumsy, and it's quite difficult to circumvent it and figure out a way for your township to pay for it. One thing you could do quite effectively, that we did without even a backward glance, without even a pause, is bond from the general fund, bond for this major project. It probably will end up costing $28 million or more. It's $8 million for one small part of it. So we're going to have to do, probably in phases, several major projects to make this, to correct this deficiency in our local infrastructure, but we can't wait. And so one way would be for the township to bond, as they did when they decided they needed the fire station and the mega DPW building. That project is 24 million, and we bonded for 19 million of the entire project. We bonded for. We just said, we can't afford it, bond. Oh, we didn't raise taxes, we didn't raise anything, except that the general fund is now has a debt against it. And that's $1 million off the top every year from now for 30 more years. Will be always $1 million less than we currently have, than the 28 million we currently have. And Mr. Wright did not say that a township couldn't take on the debt for one of these projects. He said, good luck getting them to pay for it. Good luck getting them to be the ones that pay back the debt. And I say it should be more than good luck. It's politically expedient. We should be doing this. It's politics, though, and these guys are playing hardball with their residents. And it hasn't compromised our bond rating, though, so we still can borrow more. And much as we would hate to borrow, it's better that the township borrow and the township pay back out of your taxes than that a neighborhood of 50 people be asked to pay $8 million to fix a drain, and or even worse, compromise and go to 6 million because it's marginally better, and do a half-baked job. Those are sort of the only alternatives. Those are the that we've been presented with. Mr. Bennett can't see any way out of asking homeowners to pay for this, and really all he can think of is, let's make it so cheap that even 50 homeowners can afford to pay for this, as I said, half-baked measure. Kind of infrastructure we want in Grand Blanc Township. Yes, our forefathers built us on a swamp. Yes, a lot of these houses should not be where they are, but they're there and people live in them, and we have to help them. That's just how it is. Maybe we take out a debt against the general fund, or maybe we do what other communities have also done, which is challenge the siloing of the water sewer fund. There are ways to use that money for, yes, drain projects. Some towns have successfully worked out a way to use some of their sewer water funds, which apparently we've got a lot of money sloshing around in the sewer water fund. I hear all kinds of fabulous amounts, but our rates are high. And now that we've taken on the $28 million sewer capacity fund project, they're never going to go down. But perchance we could take on another debt, maybe half and half between the general fund and the water fund. Mingling funds is very problematic. It's a struggle. You got to have a sharp attorney to help you navigate that stuff. And you might get sued. You might get sued by people who don't think they should have to pay. But so far, case law supports communities trying to do their storm drains, however they have to do it, because they sure don't want to kick it back up to the state where it actually belongs. Yes, the state should be doing this. Yes, the feds should be doing it. If it's a real problem, a real public infrastructure problem. But we're talking about a solution that this township could accomplish if it wanted to. As painful and difficult as it might be, it must be done. And whatever cuts we have to make in other departments to make this happen, we need to make it happen. From what I can see of the kind of spending that we're doing, I think we can afford to take on this debt, at least in phases, to really make a difference in the storm drain system that hasn't been updated since 1939. I think as a community, we can rise and do that. It takes imagination, resolve, thinking outside the box, and a surefire determination that no, homeowners are not going to be asked to shoulder this incredibly high cost. Guess what? it's a bad time for us to be thinking we can fund the drain project.
Why?
Because everybody else has a drain problem. But you know what? Better
It
neighborhoods
doesn't
than ours are
matter.
struggling with more money than we have. They're not even doing it. We'd have to
Yeah,
lead
but
the way in taking this on for our residents.
Yeah, but just because everybody else has the same problem doesn't mean what? You can't be a better community? You can't strive to be better? I mean, come on.
I agree. I agree. I don't think it's easy or simple to figure out a way to fund this, but I think the township can do it
Yeah,
for
well,
its
if a bit,
residents.
yeah, well, it's all bullshit because if a business was coming to Grand Blanc and they said, "Oh, I need bigger storm lines because I use a lot of water,"
No, they said what they said,
miraculously,
Lonnie, was they needed bigger sewer lines,
yeah, I
sanitary
know.
sewer lines. That
Yeah, yeah,
division is
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
most
Oh,
important
Jesus
thing in
Christ.
funding.
Okay, go ahead, talk.
Okay, so our last topic of the day is the ambulance contract. We've got geofencing, that the township opted for a geofencing agreement with Patriot Ambulance over a exclusive contract. And we'll discuss what we know about exclusive contracts. And of course, the finale of today will be the interview with Bruce Trevithick, Executive Director of the Genesee County Medical Control Authority. And we're back, Grand Blanc Watchdogs with Lonnie Adkins and Monica Shapiro, and we're talking ambulance contract, geofencing, exclusive contracts. Which is better? What did our township board decide?
Lonnie, and it's very fitting because at the end of today's program, we have our interview with Bruce Trevithick, the executive director of the Genesee County Medical Control Authority. He will do the presentation that should have been made to the board before they ever had a decision to make on whether or not to have geofencing. They were told by Scott and Dennis that we have a position against exclusive contracts, and that's that. We're never going to have that. Dennis flatly said that at a public meeting. We will never have one of these exclusive contracts. Grand Blanc Township will not do that. As if it's a danger. As if it's a
Well,
danger.
but let me chime in. Let
And
me chime in on
they
something.
never got the story, the true story from the guy who was helping other communities set this up. They never sat down with him and said, "What is an exclusive contract? Tell us about it. How does it work? Have other communities been held liable because of whatever specious things Scott worked out?" I don't even remember what it was about how you could be sued if you were a part of this thing. It was just
But here's what
BS.
drives me
Lonnie.
crazy, Monica, is that those board members have all been there many years now. Each board member has the power to make a motion anytime they want. And if they have the support of that motion, it carries regardless what the supervisor or superintendent want. So they could have made a motion and said, "I would like to be further educated on this ambulance
Absolutely.
thing."
I listen. I wanted so bad for Sarah Hugo to stand up and say, I think we need to revisit our policy on exclusive contracts. I don't think we're giving the township the best ambulance coverage. And in Genesee County right now, that's exclusive contracts. And this ambulance thing is inadequate. And the reason we went with geofencing, the only reason they came back from the meeting where Mr. Trevithick, who you will hear at the end of this show, spoke on these matters, and they walked out and said, "We better not ever do this because it'll knock our friends at Patriot out of business." So we can't be a party to this. We have to protect Patriot. They need to keep their business. This will kill their business if we did this. They count on us. So let's set up this thing called geofencing, which means one or maybe two ambulances. You'll hear Bruce Trevithick. He doubts that. He says it's maybe, he says it's, he heard only one for the city and one for Grand Blanc. But I believe in public meetings, they've said two. So maybe it's two ambulances. And if you count Grand Blanc City, which we suddenly are doing for this purpose, you have three ambulances dedicated to Grand Blanc Township. Now, here's the interesting fact. Grand Blanc Township has an average of 14 to 18 calls a day. So we'll have three ambulances fielding that and no more under geofencing. And
wow, that's a lot of calls per day. Wow,
for three ambulances. Yes, that's the point. That is the point. Every time an ambulance takes a call, they're tied up for two hours or more, just in terms of all the logistics of administering them, bringing them to the hospital, everything. Once they're on a call, they're gone for 2 hours, at least. That's what happened at East Middle School. The one ambulance that the city had was gone and no other ambulance was nearby. So it was 2 hours to wait for that one ambulance to finish its call and come. And so that's exactly what happened under the geofence. We saw it happen here in Grand Blanc. The city had the geofencing ambulance. Apparently, they're not supposed to come and help us. The problem was they were tied up. So we're operating with a 3-ambulance system for 40,000 people that averages 18 calls a day. That is not what an exclusive contract is. And an exclusive contract, and then Mr. Trevithick goes into a lengthy thing about how they cover. If they know it's a peak time, they have a very sophisticated system that makes sure they've got 6 or 7 ambulances in Grand Blanc Township at that moment. That's how those major contracts work. That's why it's working so well across the country, for this partnership to exist between ambulance, and in our case, it's a nonprofit ambulance, but company that gives you two excellent systems: a hospital system and an ambulance system, and a fire system and a police system. It's a good model that works for a community, and it has been shown to work. And the fact that we decided we couldn't have that here in Grand Blanc Township is shocking. And the board never got to hear the information we're going to be playing at the end of this show. That board should stand up and demand that Mr. Trevithick come and address them in public, so the public can hear what they're offering and want it. Because if the public heard about this, they would want it.
How long is this agreement in place? Like, what did we sign up for, actually? Do you know?
I think Ms. Hugo asked that question, and I think it's a trial period, but it's an at-will thing. I think we can cancel at any time, as a matter of fact. As they say, you can cancel at any time on the internet, and then it's a big process to cancel. So I don't know what the situation is there, but I do know that right now, yesterday, they should be signing on with the exclusive contract. That's what they should do in Grand Blanc Township. And they're not, because of loyalty to their friends at Patriot. That's not how, again, not the position you want your board making decisions about public safety from.
Right.
All right. So now, listen up. Here's the presentation from Bruce Trevithick. I mean, it's not a presentation. It's me interviewing him, but he's a great guy and we do a pretty good job. And it's another half hour of your time, or 20 minutes, I think. I can't remember. It's long though. So.
Yes, thank you, Monica. So you're doing something the board should have done, but thank you, Monica, for bringing this gentleman in to educate the community.
Absolutely. My pleasure. And speaking of educating the community, we do need to talk briefly about the school millage, because it's coming up right now. Some people are already voting and early voting. We've done a couple of episodes about the school millage, one with my daughter weighing in. I think she and I came down on different sides of the issue.
Parks Millage, right? The Parks Millage will be on the same ballot.
No, 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 no. Right now, the schools are asking for money, and they're asking for 6.3 mils, which is a pretty hefty amount. And if we vote no, our taxes
But
go
we will,
down by 6.3 mils. That's good. Our schools in general have sunk to, well, the high school, I guess, is eighth in Genesee County. And I got a very angry call from a man who lives in the Anderson Elementary uh, neighborhood within our Grand Blanc district. And he said that that school is in the 25th percentile on tests, on test scores. That's a Grand
wow.
Blanc public school. Be shoveling money at big shiny projects when the fundamentals are not there. Kids aren't learning. We'll talk about schools.
Perfect. Yes.
So
Another
we'll
hot
talk about
topic.
schools and we'll talk about whatever comes up during the week. You never know. Big stories keep breaking, Lonnie.
You can't make it up. It just happens. So
It's
yes,
so
you're right.
crazy. I mean, who knew that lawsuit was coming? Not me. I didn't advise them to do that.
Right.
Those
That
brave
was
men did it on their own. Wow.
yes.
I love it. All right. See you next week, Lonnie. See you next week,
Okay.
audience, and we'll post this as our podcast in a day or two. That's it. Lonnie, I'm so glad you're back.
Welcome to Grand Blanc Watchdogs. Today we have a special guest, Bruce Trevithick, Executive Director of the Genesee County Medical Control Authority, which assists 911 and municipalities across the county with ambulance policy and information. I'm not sure, and I will let Bruce correct me if I'm wrong about exactly what he oversees and what he does. But let me talk about Bruce for a second. He has a master's degree in American Studies and is currently a lecturer in public health at U of M Flint, as well as his position as the executive director of GCMCA. I've known Bruce for many years. His boys went to school with my kids, and I'm friends with his wife, Chantal. Bruce ran for supervisor?
Oh, long time ago, back in
Long
2000.
time ago,
Yes.
exactly. 25 years ago, maybe. And it's not an easy thing to do, as I know.
That's right. Yeah, for sure.
And it shows that you care an awful lot about your community.
Absolutely. I love Grand Blanc, and we are so blessed to be living in it.
That's right. That's how I feel. Okay, so hello, Bruce. Say hello. And
Hello, and thank you, Monica, for having me with you today. I appreciate that.
tell the audience, clarify what I said about what you do at the Genesee County Medical Control Authority.
Yeah, so the Medical Control Authority is a statutory body that is responsible for oversight of all EMS issues within the community. So essentially, we write all the rules that EMS agencies and personnel have to follow, and then we monitor the care they provide. So it involves a lot of making sure that our protocols, the rules we follow, are made updated and complete, and that we make sure that the care that's being provided is monitored. And so we do a lot of studies, we look at incidents, and we're basically kind of the watchdogs of the EMS community is what we are.
And I'm a Grand Blanc watchdog, so we have something in common. I want to talk, first of all, about exclusive contracts. My understanding is that this policy requires a majority of municipalities for the county to allow it. I think that right was established not too long ago, maybe in 2023.
2022, yeah. So maybe it might be helpful if I gave you a little history about our county and EMS.
Okay.
So our county has traditionally been what's called a free market EMS system, which is if an ambulance company gets licensed, they can pretty much go anywhere they want within the county. They have no obligation to local communities, and they basically respond to calls whenever 911 needs them and determines that they are the closest. It's a wide open free market. And so what happened 4 years ago was the Genesee County 911 Consortium, who dispatches EMS calls, made a decision to honor what's called exclusive contracts. So basically what that means is there's agencies who can sign a contract with a local municipality, and they would be the only ones allowed to take calls in that community. And so that was a big change for us, because we really, since the institution of EMS, we've never had anything like that. However, most communities do. In fact, most communities around the state and around the country have municipalities that take responsibility for EMS, either through fire-based EMS or contracts with private providers, so that their citizens can be assured that they'll get a response when they call 911 for a medical concern. That's not been the case here. So that kind of gives you a little history, and it also kind of tells you what exclusive contracts are, which are the municipality says, this is my ambulance company, these are the people I want to respond to my citizens, and nobody else can come in and essentially poach calls from my ambulance company.
Interesting. That'll bring me to a second question I have, but let me just say, it sounds as though in Grand Blanc, our future goals, Chief Jent has said, and the strategic plan has said, our goal is one day to have our own firefighter based EMS, and we can't afford that now. This sounds like second best. You still you get the same thing you would get if you had your fire department running it, only an ambulance company is running it for you. That sounds good to me.
Yeah, I mean, it actually could be better than second best, because one, most of these contracts do not require any sort of subsidy. If the volume is high enough where the ambulance company can reasonably be assured of some margin within that community, they don't charge a subsidy. So
Right,
it doesn't cost the township anything.
And also they can probably field many more ambulances than any fire department can. They can have, a large company, if their 3 ambulances that they have roaming around Grand Blanc Township are busy, they can send in another one. And that wouldn't be something that a fire department could do. If their 3 ambulances are busy, they've got to wait.
Yeah, that is true, because with exclusive contract, that ambulance company is telling the local community, we're going to guarantee that we respond to every call, and we're going to respond within a certain time frame. So if one of their units is taken out of service for whatever reason, whether it's on a call or for some other reason, they'll backfill with another ambulance.
Backfill.
Whereas so they'll bring in somebody from another community to fill that spot that's open. And there's an entire process called system status management, where these companies can assess where they're going to see volume of calls occur based on time of day, day of week, and they move units around in preparation for the expected call.
That's part of what they do as a company.
Yeah. Yes. It's a very sophisticated computerized system that is very accurate as far as where they expect the next call to be, so they can actually put resources where they're going to get calls.
Was our acceptance of this model, of the exclusive contract model, was that based on needing a majority of the municipalities to say it was okay or to sign on?
Yeah, so not to necessarily sign on, but the 911 consortium, which is the one that essentially is honoring these contracts that local municipalities have, is made up of all the local municipalities within the county, with the exception of the City of Fenton, who has their own 911 center. So that consortium, made up of all the local municipalities, had to vote on the change in policy of going from a free market system to allowing these exclusive contracts.
And how did that vote go?
It was very close. I don't remember the exact count. I want to say it was somewhere around like 14 to 12 or something like that. So it was very close. And once that happened and these contracts started getting implemented, the local municipalities who've entered into them have been thrilled with the results. I mean, they've seen response times go down and reliability of service, knowing that someone is going to be there for them. And the local municipalities, there's about 13 right now that have exclusive contracts, have basically said when the issue comes up, we'll fight to the death to keep these contracts.
Wow. Wow. I do know that it was a close vote in Monday. Can you speak to that? It was 4-3 or something on their board?
Yeah, so Mundy Township had an exclusive contract with a local company, and then that contract came up for renewal last year. It was a 3-year contract, and there was a different board in place when the renewal came up. So there was a lot of debate and question about whether they wanted to renew and have an exclusive contract. I did go to one of their township meetings and speak to them about what exclusive contracts mean and what other communities have seen as benefits. And it did end up passing on a 4-3 vote. So it is something that I think there's a lot of misinformation or misunderstanding.
Yes.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we have lived in this free market system for so long, and we're introducing something new, and it's hard for people to change.
You never did appear before the Grand Blanc Township Board to give that board, except as a concerned resident, but they never asked you to come and explain it so the board could decide what they felt about exclusive contracts and whether or not they wanted to enter into one. Scott and Dennis attended a meeting and then came back and said, we're against this. And that was what the board's position became.
Yeah. So I did attend the township board meeting last year as a private citizen.
As a private citizen.
In Grand Blanc Township, but I wanted also them to know who I was, so that if they wanted to use me as a resource to help them through this process, that I'd be available to them.
Yeah. Did they take you up on that?
Well, not only that, but after the meeting, I was apparently berated quite a bit, and then they brought in some other people who had differences of opinion, who weren't experts in EMS systems, who said that I was wrong. I reached out to Mr. Liimatta and Mr. Bennett, tried to arrange a meeting to talk with them a little more about this, but never got a response.
All right, so we'll just leave that for my audience to digest. The board itself didn't have information on this. It was announced to them that this was their policy, and that was that. Okay, so I know you said something about Fenton has its own 911, but they do have the exclusive contract, because I know Vince Lorraine is thrilled, like you said. Thrilled. He says their response times have gone from an average of 17 minutes to 7 since they've had this. So
the city of Fenton has been their own 911 center for a long, long time. And part of it has been the EMS issue. Before the Genesee County 911 Consortium honored exclusive contracts, the city of Fenton wanted to have a single provider there. And so because Genesee County 911 hadn't honored contracts before, they had the ability to do that because they had their own 911 center.
Interesting. How does an exclusive contract work? Does it preclude other ambulances from answering calls if we have a contract? That would be what you called poaching. They can't. So Mr. Bennett said that he wouldn't have such a contract because it might mean that a person could have a heart attack in Home Depot, and even if another company was right there, they wouldn't be allowed to go answer the call. So if Patriot is sitting in the ambulance in the parking lot of Home Depot by chance and a call comes in, they won't be able to answer that call. And it sounds like it is true, but Patriot wouldn't be sitting there because we have an exclusive contract and we're well aware that we're covered adequately by MedStar, for instance. I'm naming names, and you had warned me in advance that you can't be supportive of any specific one ambulance company, but I'm using that as an example. So yes, our the old free market model would no longer operate. There wouldn't be all kinds of various ambulance companies trolling around the township looking for a call. We would just have the one if we were to do this.
If Grand Blanc Township had an exclusive contract, that would be true.
Yes.
And there's good reason for that. You're not paying these companies any money, so they need some sort of guarantee that they're going to have enough volume to make it profitable for them.
Yes.
To have to make that dedicated service. I mean,
yes.
to be able to put an ambulance with a crew in a community 24/7, 365 is hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the only way they can make sure that is they're going to survive financially is to make sure that they get all of the calls in that community.
Okay. Another objection that Mr. Bennett has raised is that we would be vulnerable to countywide lawsuits if someone was, I guess, had a long wait time, such as the incident that happened in Grand Blanc a couple of weeks ago. They would be the lawsuit. His dark prediction was it would be a lawsuit anywhere in the county. Anyone who was dissatisfied with this exclusive contract system, they could sue, and we'd be part of that lawsuit. So we're protecting our taxpayers from this potential lawsuit. What kind of liability has there been in exclusive contracts?
Well, so far we've had exclusive contracts for 4 years in this county, and to my knowledge, no community has been sued. The 911 center has not been sued because those contracts exist. I believe that there is an unnecessary fear about the potential of somebody suing the 911 center and thus the consortium, which is all the communities that make up the 911 center, because they didn't get an ambulance they felt was closest to them because they were in exclusive contract. The problem with that is that there are oftentimes situations where the closest unit is not sent even without exclusive contracts. And I'll kind of point you to police and fire. Police and fire, we send the more distant police or fire unit all the time because the local municipality says, this is our police officer. We want that police officer to go, even though there might be a neighboring police officer who's much closer, or a fire truck that's much closer to the call. We don't send the closest. So the idea that we could get sued because we are honoring in a contract and we're sending the closest, most appropriate, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well, an exclusive provider that we said we want to go, is just not something that is reasonable to expect to have happen, because it doesn't happen now and hasn't happened ever under these situations where local municipalities have said, hey, send my police officer, send my fire truck. They're not the closest, but they're mine.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the EMS exclusive contracts are saying as well. There may be times they're not the closest, but they're mine. They know my community, and we know they're going to be there to provide for our citizens.
And also, my husband, former trauma director, has stated that having a single ambulance provider streamlines the process when they get to the hospital, gives them, they know the hospital knows them, they know what to do, they know what paperwork has to be filed, they get their reports in. When it's a hodgepodge of all different ambulance companies going all over the place, a lot of information, necessary information, just doesn't find its way to the places it needs to be. It's not an efficient way to gather important information that you need for medical records. So
yeah, and under the free market system that we've had, at one point we had as many as 15 transporting private companies in this county, and they're all fighting for those calls. And a lot of them at the time were trying to, they were small organizations doing their best to try and survive, and so sometimes they cut corners a little bit here in order to save a penny or two. 15 for this size community is outrageous.
yes.
And so what we've seen over time is some of that has gone away. And when you have an exclusive contract and you have providers are limited in number, like you said, you're going to get a better understanding of who they are and the type of service they're going to provide.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trevithick, for a very thorough job of explaining what an exclusive contract is. And when we come back, we'll hear all about geofencing, which is what Grand Blanc Township currently uses as its EMS model. Okay, and we're back with Mr. Bruce Trevithick, the Executive Director of the Genesee County Medical Control Authority. So far, he's given us a very thorough overview of what an exclusive ambulance contract is. And now we want to find out about geofencing.
What do you know about geofencing? That's what we currently have.
Yeah, so really the label that's been placed on Grand Blanc City and Grand Blanc Township's contracts has been referred to as a preferred provider contract. So what that means is that the contracted company is in that community, and the 911 center basically puts an electronic fence around that unit and in that community, and they're not made available for any calls outside of that community. So, and any calls that come in for that community, they are the first ones to go to that call. So the geofencing thing is just the way 911 kind of encircles the community for that unit, so it doesn't get pulled when the call comes into the 911 dispatcher and the CAD screen they're looking at. So if somebody gets a call that's just over the border in Burton, just over the border of Grand Blanc Township, even though Grand Blanc's contracted provider might be the closest, they're not going to get dispatched to that call because they are exclusively held for Grand Blanc City and Grand Blanc Township.
Wouldn't that be true also of an exclusive contract? The MedStar people wouldn't get those calls.
Yeah, so this is the kind of strange thing when you're talking about people who oppose exclusive contracts but have preferred provider contracts, is what they're doing is they are preventing other communities from taking their ambulance. So it's in some ways exclusive, right? They're preventing that ambulance from serving somebody that might be closer, which was an argument against exclusive contracts.
Right.
The difference with preferred provider contracts is that they're not going to exclusively get all the calls. So if for some reason there is somebody who is in cardiac arrest, their heart stops, and there is an ambulance that is closer and it's not a preferred provider contracted ambulance, then 911 will send that one there.
So because they're still
essentially,
yeah,
essentially they're kind of
having it both ways.
Exactly. The other problem with preferred provider contracts is there is no strong accountability to the contracted provider. They, have not told the local community, hey, I'm going to guarantee that I always have an ambulance available for every call that comes in. In the Grand Blancs and City and the Township, they average maybe 14 or 15 calls a day. So if they say, well, we're going to make sure we leave 1 or 2 ambulances available for you, more than likely there are going to be times that those ambulances are not available for
which is,
Grand Blanc calls.
Let me just interrupt you. That's exactly what happened at East Middle School. The geofencing was not yet in place in Grand Blanc, but it was in place in the city. And Scott has indicated that the one in the city and the 2 that we'll get will be for both of us. I don't know if the city was so geofenced in that but what I've heard is they were around and they might have come to the East Middle School, but they were occupied at the hospital. They were doing, because it takes 3 hours usually for turnaround after or 2 hours anyway, and they were there doing something else granted in the city, but there was no available ambulance. And I don't know why the competitive free market wasn't working either, but in Grand Blanc with 40,000 people and all our general fund money and everything else, We couldn't provide an ambulance to a girl that was injured at East Middle School for 2 hours, 3 hours, and her mother had to drive her. And the solution to that was this sort of inadequate addition of 2 ambulances that would be sitting here. And if there's 14 calls a day, definitely they're not going to be available sometimes. Of course, an exclusive contract works better. Doesn't make any sense. Yes, that would prevent a 2-hour wait time. Here's Vince Lorraine saying 7 minutes in Fenton. And here we are saying, well, maybe it'll be better next time and we won't have quite a 2-hour one. We don't know. It's ridiculous.
And my understanding in talking with the 911 director is that this change isn't going to add 2 more. It's going to have a total of 2 for Grand Blanc City and Township.
Oh, great.
So I don't think there's 3. I think there's just going to be 2. They're adding 1 additional, and those 2 will serve both the city and the township.
Oh.
And they will not be pulled. The only time they would really be pulled is if there is we have this thing called critical status. So if there is, we get down to 0 ambulances available for the entire county. We go into what's called critical status, which means 911 reaches out to all the ambulance companies and says, listen, we're short of ambulances. Can you bring more in? And they end up stacking calls. So they will actually hold calls that are low acuity calls and only prioritize high acuity calls. And so in those situations, it is possible under this contract, this preferred provider contract, and the relationship with 911, is that the Grand Blanc units could be pulled out for that reason to respond to other calls in the county.
And
now,
go ahead.
I can tell you that when we go into critical status, it probably happens, it used to happen a lot more. These contracts, I think, have helped in some regard to decrease those. And the critical status is only happening in non-contracted areas. So I would say probably we're at maybe 7-8 times a month that we go into critical status.
That
Last
seems like
month,
a lot.
I think we were at, it is. Last month, I think there was probably about 22 hours worth of critical status, where basically we had 0 ambulances available. So, in those situations, it is conceivable that the units assigned to Grand Blanc could be pulled to other parts of the county.
What about if we had the exclusive contract? Are they part of the getting called into this?
No. So exclusive contract providers right now, they have dedicated those units to those communities, and they cannot be pulled out when uncontracted areas need units.
Wow.
Now that seems, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're not taking care of people. But those local communities have made a commitment to the ambulance company, and the ambulance companies made commitments to them. So, basically this behooves people who don't have contracts to get on board and make sure you're taking care of your citizens by guaranteeing an ambulance is going to be there for them.
Making sure you're taking care of your citizens, not favoring your political donor friend who doesn't want to be cut out of the free market. In fact, wants to take it over, because if we are limited to 2 ambulances from Mr. Bennett's political donor friend, we're in big trouble if we're getting 14 calls a day. That is not protecting our citizens. An exclusive contract would protect our citizens. And it's been proven in all of these communities. So,
the thing that will happen is if both of those units are out of the Grand Blanc area, then 911 will find the next closest ambulance to respond to the call in Grand Blanc. Now, where's that going to be? I mean, sometimes it could be, in Swartz Creek or Montrose, or who knows where.
It must have been far away on the day that the East Middle School girl was injured.
I can tell you in general, when someone calls 911 and they describe a situation, the call taker at 911 is evaluating that to determine if it's a potentially life-threatening injury or
right.
illness. And that puts it in a different category. So more than likely on that day, we were in critical status, and they were holding calls. And based upon the caller information, it was determined to be something that didn't need an ambulance right away, and they held it until
right.
they had an ambulance come available.
Right.
That would be my guess.
And as you said, that wouldn't have happened if we had the exclusive contract. So I say, and we're about done here, that the geofencing option seems deeply inferior. And I think the board might have agreed if they'd been able to hear from both sides, you, and make their own decision. And instead, they were simply handed geofencing as the only option. And some ideas, some not necessarily true ideas that were given as reasons why. So,
It's not a perfect solution, and it's definitely a lesser solution. I mean, it is good that at least they have taken this step to try and provide some service to the local citizens, but it's not going to be sufficient to cover all the calls that come into Grand Blanc. And other instances will occur where an ambulance simply is not available because those two are tied up and another one's not available around the county.
yes, I agree. Thank you very much for talking to me.
My
And
pleasure.
Say hello to Chantal and give her my best.
I sure will. Thank you.
Thank you.